Okay, so we will make the official recording announcement start. This is our third meeting together, and tonight we're talking mostly about our survey and our upcoming community listening sessions. So just to get the conversation going, think about yourself for a moment and think about how you like to give feedback. Surveys show that middle-aged white women are really good at taking surveys. Older adults are also really good at taking surveys. So just kind of thinking to yourself for a moment, if you were given the opportunity at a place that you like to go to, a store you like to shop at, a place where you receive services, do you like surveys? Would you like to be invited to a focus group? And so thinking about who are my survey folks, go ahead, just pop your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do you like about a survey?
It's got to be something that I really like. Either I had a really good experience or a really bad experience.
Right, you're on this little guide here, you're either red or you're green, right? And you're feeling like somebody needs to know that this was great, somebody needs to know that this was horrific.
It's average. It's not worth my time.
Yeah. What else motivates you to do a survey?
If there's like a chance I might get something. I feel like most of the time they're very ambiguous. So I'm like, I'll fill it out and see what happens at the end. And then 20 minutes later I regret all the time that I spent doing this and for nothing. But I think most of the time I'm like, oh, I think I might be able to maybe win a prize or like a sweepstakes type of thing. Like sometimes Target does that. Old Navy gets me a lot. I like the ones from Old Navy where you get to do input on like shirt designs and stuff like that. So I don't know if it like interests me.
Yeah, I know. I've been motivated by the instant, like fill out this survey and get a free cheeseburger at your next visit or whatever. So it's not necessarily.
Or if they tell you that it's only a couple questions. Like if you know it's like
They lie.
2, 3 questions.
No, they do.
They do. No,
I don't know.
100%
There's
right.
no way in heck, even if you just
Yeah.
went through this thing, not even reading it, you could finish it in the amount of time that they say it will. They do that to get you to start.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it looks like it's going to take longer, I just don't finish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
I'll
get
bail.
like
I'll bail.
75% through, and then you're kind of like, I've been in here for 10 minutes, and
Yep.
now I'm over it. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll bail.
Yeah. Okay. Any other feedback on surveys?
I hate where the only thing in the survey is you either get to check the box or whatever like that. It's like, no, I like the verbatims because when I'm looking at the results of a survey, those are the things where I really get the value.
That does
What
not
they're
surprise
really
me.
thinking, because
Yeah.
most of the time the stuff is in between the lines of, if I want to tell them how I feel, I want to put it in my
Yeah.
own words, not necessarily just click, click, click. Or
Right.
the survey that's so short, it's like, you can't be getting any
Right,
value
3
out of
questions
this.
and.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
I know, I have a real beef with 10-point scales. Because, like, to me, what's the difference between an 8 and a 7 in how I felt at
Yep,
whatever fast food place I was at?
yeah.
So typically if we do those, I'm like, do a scale of 5, because then there's some real extremes there. Any other survey feedback before we?
I would say I never do like the star surveys, even though you're promised a chance at winning something, because I won't win.
Yeah.
I do.
Oh, come on.
There's actually, I worked at Target. Like, you would have people
I would
from our
never
store
win.
winning
But
sometimes.
personally,
What happened when we were at the Milkman? Who
That
won?
was a miracle.
Oh,
Oh,
see, there you go. You go from never to a
Yeah,
miracle.
one
Was
time.
watching over me.
Not enough to have her do it again.
No, but I do take surveys like for my kid's school or like a referendum, government survey.
'Cause it means
So
something, right?
if you know that there's like a
Because
real
it's my
entity
money.
on the other end.
Yeah, if it's my money or my kids.
Okay.
You know, I do my doctor surveys. I do generally do those.
Gosh, I hate when I have to go to the doctor and fill out so many for my daughter. Just because every time I have to fill out the same one.
Yeah.
Mine are like, you don't have to do the survey, but I will. But I won't
never
do the
fill them
store
out.
ones because
Yeah.
it just seems like a waste of time.
So here's a couple of
Yeah.
takeaways that I already
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
We have to think about length. We have to think about the questions that we're asking, not just the amount, but what's actually in those questions to make them valuable. And 3, knowing that your library is a trusted entity, you're probably going to have some community currency with that. So anytime any of us can sort of promote the validity, the trustworthiness, the importance of this survey in our community, then that would really help our survey move
Yeah, that's the
along.
other thing that I think some surveys, they don't market the reason behind it, because for me, it's always, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And that's the way I have to look at it. If I'm gonna
Yeah.
get somebody else to provide feedback, it's like, well, what's gonna be in it for them?
Yeah.
Why should they care?
Right.
I mean, they
And I
should
think
do
that
it.
tie to the finances
like,
is a good one.
If we can somehow maybe, if we want to, make our survey be tied into their tax dollars. I feel like then people are more invested.
Yeah. I love that question of like, you already know that your tax dollars support, like, so that you can sort of gently suggest that you should know.
Right, and if you don't, well, now you do.
And then let's talk about focus groups
Right.
briefly. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this one, but how many of you have ever participated in a community listening session, a focus group, a talk back for DOT, your school? How do you feel about those opportunities? Do you like those? Do they make you anxious? Do you wonder what the point is?
I like not only participating, but I like hearing other people's thoughts, because oftentimes
Yeah.
there's individuals who have thoughts about something that I hadn't considered. And it's always good to get the full breadth of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one of the values I see there, especially if you get a good variety of people in there that are all also open. I hate getting in a group where like nobody talks. It's like, okay, well then you can hear my opinion, because I don't mind sharing mine. But
Yeah.
you want to get as many varied opinions as
Yeah.
possible.
For sure. And I like the idea that you're using a community listening session as being a member of the audience, but also listening to other people. That's great. I think more people should probably do listening. What else? What else is good or difficult about the focus groups?
I like it when I participate in focus groups when there's like an outside facilitator, because then I feel like I can be more honest.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's someone like not affiliated with the health department or not affiliated with the library,
Yeah.
so you can be more honest about your comments and feedback.
Yeah. I'll say that's one of the great advantages of my job is I am invested in the outcome for my client, but I'm not taking personally what anyone has to say, the feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all relevant to me to learn about what's going on. Yeah. Anybody
Also,
else?
Timing and like offering snacks and stuff is very nice, and I found has enticed people to participate.
Yeah, being hospitable,
Yes.
right? You know, if you have the smell of coffee, people are chattering, someone gives you a warm welcome, invites you in, hands you a cookie.
And if you have it in a space that maybe is a little bit more intimate, like depending on the size of the group, if it's only
Mhm.
like 10 people, having it in a smaller space
Yeah.
is sometimes better.
Yeah, setting can be really important, for sure.
I think size of the group is important as well. Sometimes smaller groups are a little easier than a giant group.
Yeah, do you think an introvert might be intimidated to walk into a room of 40 people who are all
Yeah.
jibber jabbering away?
Yeah, that introvert is not going to want to.
Yeah. I know for some of the larger community meetings that I've been to just as a citizen, right, you're walking in and there's older people up at the front and you have to, you kind of feel like you're walking into a church service, it's quiet, there's microphones, and then you're sort of waiting for your turn to talk versus that focus group where, hi, this is your group of 4 people that you're going to be working with, introduce yourselves and have that smaller, more intimate conversation. Yeah. Any other feedback on focus groups? Okay, great. You guys are already hitting talking points that I want to get to tonight. This is really what we're working on today. Deeper conversations. We will start developing some of our survey and listening plan content. Let me start by telling you, I'm not asking you to do my job for me. I have a lot of content that I have prepared and ready, but having a committee like all of you helps me hone in on where not only your best energy is spent, but where my best energy is spent. So rest assured, I've got lots of ideas, but you all are gonna help me tighten those up. And we're gonna find out what you all wanna learn through this process from your community. So we will be having lots of small group conversations tonight. We will be talking first, just a little bit of review about those patron profiles that we did last month. We will spend the bulk of our time honing in on questions, and then we will wrap up our meeting tonight talking about how we can encourage participation with both our survey and our community listening sessions, as well as how you all can help participate in that process yourself. So to go back and review, the reason we did these patron personas is we were trying to think about kind of the prototypes, profiles, and archetypes of the people that already use the library. Sometimes when I do this process with communities, they put in the non-user as one of their archetypes, and that's perfectly fine too, but the non-users are often kind of big mysteries to us. So it's okay to think about the non-users through this process, but I do want to underpin that with the majority of the people that are going to participate in this process are users of some kind. They either desire to be users, they're low or intermittent users, medium level users, or your power users. It is really tough for these two processes to meet non-users. So we can think about them, but let's remember that there'll be a small percentage of who we'll hear from through this process. And so why did we create these patron personas? Well, we want to understand the interests, the motivations, the behaviors of the people that we already know are using the library, as well as start to think about the barriers. So if you were here last month, you remember we kind of were joking about some of the barriers that we had for people who they fall into what I call that high touch, high need. They need a lot of help. They always have a lot of questions. They may or may not like the answers that they receive. But we can start to identify the barriers to their use once we understand what it is they want and what motivates them. So to just kind of do a quick review, these are all of the archetypes that you came up with. Now, I didn't use some of the names that you used because I was merging ideas that came from both groups. So this is your look into part of my process as I start to aggregate our findings. This is the list that we came up with. So the other way that I visualize this as well that I'll put up here for you is I also started thinking of these. I know my handwriting's a little small for everybody, but I'll come around. I did a little color coding of these. So we've got adult, youth, and things that apply to all ages, right? Bookworms could be any age at our library. English learners could be any age at our library. Tech novices and the tech lovers can be of any age at our library. So as you look through this list, and we're thinking about what questions we want to ask and what we want to know from our community, are there other categories of people that we maybe overlooked last month, or anything else that you sort of are, as you look at this, you're thinking like, oh gosh, we missed, fill in the blank. Not that this list has to be exhaustive, but I just want to make sure that this represents some of those user categories that might be our core or key library users. So I'll give you a minute to think.
You know what we didn't put on here? The kids.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Do kids use libraries?
Yeah.
I think you think of them in terms of both parents.
Mhm.
Or story time, so I think that's something that.
Say kids, do you mean, because there's high schoolers are there, and
Right,
are
I
they
guess
not in the
all-
kids category?
I guess all the kids underneath that, the
Yeah.
school agers and even preschool.
Yeah, so maybe pre-readers we want to think about, and they are probably dependent on one of these categories, right? Yeah.
But also the school age kids that are not high school but still come here and, because they don't necessarily have to be here with an adult.
Yeah, they can get here on their own, right?
Right, they can
Yeah.
bike here, they can still come to do the activities.
Yeah.
They can check out their own books, because if they can write their name, they can have a library card.
Yep.
I'm thinking of the person that comes here just to read the newspaper.
Yeah. They're a core user.
Yeah, they park
Yeah.
themselves
We did
by
talk
the
about that.
fireplace and
Yeah.
Would they be in the lifelong learners category?
Say that one more time?
We did talk about that
Yeah,
last
or
week,
even the
or
active
last
older
time.
adults.
Older
Yeah.
adults, active older adults, or
I
lifelong
don't necessarily
learners.
consider them active. I consider them somebody who just comes to the library, reads the newspaper, and
Yeah.
goes home. You don't know anything else about them.
Well, and let's remember in that Venn diagram, let's think of these as bubbles. There will be overlap, right? So you might have your newspaper reader that is also in this Libby lovers category because they might read it only on their iPad. And so there can be overlap. So we don't have to think of this as like we need to imagine every category
Possible.
possible. But we're just trying to think of like these core users. And the other thing that, and tell me if I'm off base, are there caregivers of adults? And we talked a lot about caregivers of children. Are there caregivers of adults?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Okay.
I would say we're missing the super studiers and work at home people. There are
okay.
lots of them that come here. I'd say it's a huge population.
I think we talked about them at one point, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. All of our study rooms are constantly full, and there are people all over the library studying or working. I'm not sure, I don't ask.
Our rooms are always full. I wonder if that's something we need to think about. How we would think about that, but somehow creating more. Yeah, like as we lower our collection, creating more.
Okay. Anything else? Again, no wrong answers, and we don't have to be exhaustive, but we can just keep these all in the back of our minds. So, like I mentioned at the top of the meeting, majority of tonight we're going to be talking about how we get community feedback through these two channels of our surveys and our community. What do we want to call these meetings? So many libraries call these different things. Are we calling them community listening? Community conversations? Okay, great. So in our community conversations, both of these two methods will be getting feedback. And that feedback will come into multiple formats that we'll be able to use as this committee, okay? So we want to think about these three categories. What can our patrons tell us? We know that the library collects data, and that data can tell us many things. But I want to focus our conversation and this work on what only our patrons can tell us, right? Because we know how many times the meeting room is used. We know how many times a book checks out. We know how many people walk in through the doors. We can probably do a study to find out what time of the day is busiest or slowest. We could do a count in the parking lot of how many cars are here. But we want to focus on what only our patrons can tell us. And so through these two methods, we're going to learn things about individuals, so their opinions, their ideas, their thoughts, their goals, their aspirations for the library. And then we're also going to aggregate some of this into group stuff. We're going to learn things about groups. We will get feedback from a group of older adults. We will get a feedback from a group of parents. We will hopefully get feedback of power users. We will hopefully get feedback from intermittent users. And so we have to then differentiate between what do we want to know about individuals' experiences and what do we want to know about these larger groups. And that's where these personas come in. Okay. Then we want to think about what information we need to make decisions about where the library is headed through this strategic plan. So we can probably ask a million questions, and I've got a sample that's about like 4 or 5 pages long of questions we can ask. But I want us to think about what we need to ask, what we must ask to help direct the library's work best. And then we want to find out what data and feedback is going to be most valuable. So that's where that prioritization is going to come in. And that'll play into our conversations tonight as well. We could ask questions in 2 categories, 7 categories. But when we think about those categories, which ones are the most crucial that we want to ask? And so going back to some of our own experiences with surveys, with focus groups, if those are the really core and important questions, we want to make sure that one, we get them at the front of a survey so that you don't skip out on it, or we want to make those required questions in the survey so that people can't skip over them. And then in our focus groups, if we have key important priorities that we want to cover in our community conversations, we want to make sure that we warm up to that question so that people are ready and primed to give a good answer. And we want to make sure that people aren't so bored with the process that they can't engage with that question or those questions really deeply. So there is some psychology to how we're going to strategize around this. And then finally, we're going to have to decide what method is best suited for the type of question we want. There'll be some questions that only make sense in a survey. There'll be some questions that only make sense in a focus group. And then we'll want to have a little bit of overlap so that we can see how different groups might answer the same question. So again, we'll want to have a strategy going, which helps with our priorities, helps with understanding what we want to know. So, and finally, I just want to make sure that I note that our survey questions, they require being really specific and they require being really brief. So that people don't get caught up in the language of your survey. We want that language to be easy for people to understand. And we want survey questions that spit out good data, because that's what you get from a survey, right? You can have open-ended questions, you can have checkboxes, you can have rankings, but in the end, we people have to analyze that. So we want to have simple enough questions that the data is clean. And then with our feedback sessions, when we have these community conversations, they can and will go anywhere. And so we want to make sure that we're asking good, open-ended questions, that people can have many different ideas, thoughts, or feedback. The conversation is best when everyone doesn't think the same. And of course, the conversations are enhanced by how diverse of a group we can get in the room together. So we want to think about these two strategies and how we frame these questions, because both surveys and community conversations will have different goals and, in some cases, different audiences. And so then I just wanted to kind of break this down, how the feedback works, because I mentioned this before. Depending on the type of questions we ask and whether or not we add demographic data to this survey, we may be able to look at individual, or I shouldn't say this, we will be able to look at individual responses. Individual responses are only as good as our survey design and the type of questions that we ask. In this case, for the purposes of strategic planning, individual responses are really only truly valuable in that aggregate, or if we add a piece to the survey in which we want to invite core responders to sit down for one-on-one deep interviews. That is an option that we do have available to us. But the individual responses are only as good as how many we get. So in the end, we are really looking for large groups to participate in this. We can take any number from the survey and call it a success. So we could have 30 responses, 300 responses, 3,000 responses, but that will depend on the questions we ask and the quality of the response. So in the end, what we want to get out of this is good data, and we want to have an aggregate of the responses. That is really the core piece of what I help you work through, is pulling together and making sense and finding the core themes, the emerging ideas, things that repeat themselves, barriers that appear over and over and over again. So coming through both the individual and the group responses, pulling that all into the aggregate so that we can see what those trends are, is really the reason why we want to have multiple avenues of feedback for our community. Any questions or comments so far?
I apologize if I missed this. Is the survey group different than the community conversation group, or will there be overlap?
There will probably be a little bit of overlap, especially for people who are people who love meetings, people who love participating in their community. In my experience, there are often people who have taken the survey that participate in the community conversations. On the flip side, your community conversations can also encourage people then to fill out that survey if they have not already. So it makes the case for having some information the same between those two methods, but having some different questions. And again, that goes back to some questions are best designed in a survey, and some questions are best suited for the open-ended nature of the community conversation. So you want just enough overlap that you could see something like survey respondents overwhelmingly disliked this idea and the community conversations also disliked this idea. Or one liked the idea and one didn't like the idea. Let's take a look at, what factors might have been different between those groups. Well, the survey was everyone 60 plus, and the community conversations, we estimated the average age of 32. And so then we might be able to see what was different about the responses. Does that help? Okay, great, sure.
What program do you suggest or are we planning on using for the survey?
So I don't have any proprietary software that I use for this. Sometimes libraries will have their own SurveyMonkey or a JotForm account, and I'm flexible. If this were going to be like a 20, 30 question type survey where we needed, where we needed a lot of data to come out of it, then I might recommend a proprietary product. But I've used JotForm, I've used SurveyMonkey, I've used Google Forms. All of them work just fine, especially in that quick spin out of data. So I have no preference. It's really up to Jennifer if there's a product that you prefer. Not to put you on the spot. You don't have to decide.
We did have survey.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we can.
I feel like we use Google.
Yeah.
Google used
Mhm.
for
And for MCFLS's survey, we use JotForm, so that could be an option for you to utilize if they already have a subscription.
This conversation is making me think about two issues. One,
Yeah.
it may be a follow-on to the groups that you talked about earlier. But it's not clear to me how we invite people to participate either in the survey or the community conversations.
Mhm. I owe you $1. We're going to work on that at the end of our meeting.
Okay, I
You're setting the
apologize
stage
that maybe-
beautifully.
Well, I didn't know if
No, not yet. We'll wrap our meeting today with that. Because it's twofold, right? We have to make sure that this information is out in the community, in the places where the people we want to come to this will see it. Most libraries promote in-house, and that's great. But we also want to diversify that a little bit so that the message gets out to a wider audience.
that goes to my second point.
Yeah.
In terms of groups that we talked,
Yeah.
the group that I don't know might have been excluded from that are the non-users.
Yeah.
We talked about that too.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that listed up there as how do you get feedback or data from people who aren't currently using the library?
Yeah.
And maybe they're not using the library because they
Yeah.
don't feel like it fills their needs,
Yeah.
or they weren't satisfied with their experience the couple
Mm-hmm.
times they came.
Right.
And then you might say, well, if we knew that, we might change something
Mhm.
to make them become more regular users.
Yes. So to not do too much of a spoiler alert, but there are ways, and that depends on something we've talked about in previous meetings. One, we have a lack of local news that is specific to Franklin, right? But there are channels through the municipality. Can we be on a water bill? Can we be in a mailer that's going out? Can we be on garbage cans when garbage pickup happens? And I'm not suggesting that those are free or available to us at the moment, but there are lots of ways that communities do try to reach non-users by utilizing other communication channels that exist. So school district, utilities, other public services that have communiques, that those would get to people that conceivably might not be library users. But that is a key point for us to talk about when we get to the promotion on our agenda. Any other questions? Okay, I promise you're going to get a chance to talk because I also want to have a chance to have a snack. So this is what I've set up to start with. Even though these are fixed bullet points here, I am flexible and these are not fixed. This is our starting point, okay? So this is the point in the evening where we're going to start talking about what information do we need. And so I've separated things out into these buckets. Usage of the library or spaces within the library, programs, collection/materials, and That's a little bit of library jargon. So think about anything that the library owns that you can borrow or use that is not like a computer, okay? So this could be digital materials, it could be library of things, books, of course, magazines, newspapers, any one of your online resources. So think of collections and materials as a really big bucket. Satisfaction, do we want to find out if our customers and patrons are satisfied? And then we can always talk about what their vision for the future is. So these are just 5 buckets. These are not, I'm not being prescriptive here, but this is generally what clients that I work with want to find out about. Now, if a library was going to be going through a capital campaign, well, we might be really focusing on usage and spaces. If the library is looking to either grow or shrink their collection, we might be talking about collections or materials. If let's just say in your last strategic plan, programs were a huge push, you may want to talk a lot about your programs and your surveys and community conversations to find out if that move has been successful. So this is what I came up with. What do you think? What are the buckets of information that you want to hear about? And you can say, Rachel, these are great, let's move on, that's fine. Or, I mean, I'd feel good, but you don't have to give me a gold star like that. Is there one you want to take out? Is there one you want to be more specific about? What do you think?
Most of the stuff that I thought about, even the stuff that's kind of out there, fits into one of those categories, so I'm okay with those.
Sure. And definitely there's subcategories of all of these, so that's for sure. Franklin staff, what do you think?
I think usage and spaces, because this building was built in 2002, and it's very 2000, I mean, it's just very first decade of 2000.
It's
You know,
so
we're in the-
2000s.
Yeah.
This is called the aughts now.
The aughts.
The aughts, yeah, the early aughts.
And it would be nice to know, are our spaces no longer meeting the needs of people?
Yeah.
I really want to know that.
And it's a hard category to have internal data on unless you've done like one of those retail heat maps of people walking through your building. It's a tough category to have hard data on, yeah.
I think that one and vision for the future are like the top 2 things that I really wanna.
Okay.
Well, and I guess collections and materials too, just to see if people, like, I feel like just to see if people are thinking, like with the digital age coming so much, like, do they find that we have, yes, just in general.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
What they're looking for.
Yeah.
Do we have what
Do
they're
we
looking
have what they're looking for? And then do we have stuff that they're not looking for anymore?
Yeah, are there things that we're just walking right by it and we're not. Yeah.
I guess we have that information because it's not getting circulated.
Yeah.
Do we want to know who our users are?
Tell me more.
How, where are they coming from? How long is it taking them to get here? Are they Franklin residents or are they residents of other communities?
Okay, so some demographics.
Some demographics, and I don't know if that fits in any of those categories you have there. If we found out that 40% of our users were not Franklin residents, would that change the way we think about what we do? And maybe it wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think it would because they're still using library. We're not going
Well,
to turn people away.
we'd have to ask them.
But what goes through my mind as a Franklin taxpayer, if I found that a significant portion of the patrons of a library were not residents, that means they're not financially supporting it, maybe I would think different about what kind of financial support I want to provide to the library.
So we should definitely not ask those questions.
Right, I was just gonna say, now that you frame it that way, please don't ask that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Well, but
Well,
you get what
and-
I'm saying?
I
And
totally
let me-
get what you're saying.
And let me pose that there probably is an answer to that lies in some CERC data, right? Because of reciprocal borrowing, we know we know some of these things. So we could, and this is getting in the weeds, but we could ask demographic information both at the community conversation and in the survey. Oftentimes we make that optional because it does, some people will not fill out a survey if they feel like they can be identified in any way. But what we could do, and I've seen this happen in other communities where reciprocal borrowing happens or there's mutual library services, that they may ask questions and frame it such as, do you use any libraries other than this one?
That's what it's-
Where is the community in which you reside?
Is this your preferred library?
Right, is this your preferred library? Is this your library of choice? And so we can frame it that way. It softens the data, but it does tell us some things. Again, unless we get about 10,000 responses, it won't be scientifically significant, but comparing the survey and the community conversations then to some hard data that comes to us from McFliss or that we could ask McFliss to get for us, we could make some assumptions and have some good data to back up what we see or don't see in a survey type question.
So on a couple of other thoughts on this topic.
Mhm.
If we found out that the vast majority of our users were only traveling within 5 minutes through a distance of this facility,
Mhm.
that might mean there's significant numbers of neighborhoods in the community that aren't using the library. And does that mean that you need some other locations around the community?
I caution a little bit against putting too much weight on Franklin residents using our library versus non-residents, because I know from the data I've looked at, there's a significant portion of eastern Franklin that goes to Oak Creek. Yeah, because it's closer.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
same for Hales Corners, that whole western section of Franklin. A
Mhm.
lot of those families think Hales Corners is their home
Yeah.
library because they've always gone there, it's closer.
Well, and jumping to hypotheticals here, without finding a solution, again, understanding the purpose behind knowing the answer, and then what possible actions would be reasonable to take. Sometimes you just know information and there's no action that you could take because Franklin is not going to be building an express library, or Franklin is not going to be building a branch library. But knowing that you have these shared patrons, these borrowed patrons, might change a marketing strategy. It might change an outreach opportunity. It might change some programmatic choices that you make so that you don't compete with a library in your region. So you're sort of sharing forces and sharing patrons better than being head-to-head competition. So it could reveal answers like that. Again, I don't want to get into the solutions because that's not what we're here for today. Yeah, but I think understanding your question is a really good one in that demographics, that if we understand the purpose behind the question, we can formulate a really excellent question to ask our patrons, or understand data that we need to find somewhere else behind that question. Does that make sense? So whether demographics are on our survey or not, we might be able to get in at that information through other channels as well, once we understand the
I
question.
don't want to make the survey too long that people don't want to take it.
100%. We want to make sure that the survey feels reasonable, and you will all be test subjects to ensure that we reach that purpose. So that's part of our process as well, is once we've developed it, we want all of you to take it. We will find our mistakes, we'll find the confusing language, we'll find the things that don't work the way we hoped it would, and then we'll wipe those out and then we'll try it again.
That comes with programs too. Like we have a ton of, well, maybe not a ton, but we have a lot of data when it comes to our programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's something that a lot of people like to talk about. It's definitely successful, but again, it's something that I think we know a lot about already.
And I'll say from my personal opinion, it's not worth it in a survey that you want to be really tight to ask questions that you already know answers to, so that you can be like, our survey said that everyone loves our programs. Well, again, you might already have that data that you can pull out elsewhere and show that as evidence.
How much background information do people need, whether it's a survey or community conversations, especially when we're talking about vision for the future? Some people still have a belief that libraries are places where you check stuff out, as opposed to, did you know that, blah, 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 right? How much of a day is spent with, well, you're talking about meeting rooms.
Yeah.
programming, some of the new stuff with Create Space, the outreach that we do. You know, to kind of help them think about, okay, if I'm visioning for the future of the library, I don't want to vision a future that's already 10 years old.
Yeah.
We've already doing that.
Yeah.
What else about the stuff that we're not doing?
So let me give you an example from a client that I worked with last year. That community is much smaller than yours, but kind of a emerging suburban, previously rural community. So near a Wisconsin city center, close enough that they were in a growing boom. Their community had done like a 25-year comprehensive plan, I think 2 years prior to this process. So this is fresh information. And there were a bunch of goals in that. I mean, it's a 25-year plan. There's a lot of goals in that. So one way that we tied vision for the future to the library is there was already good data that had been collected for that comprehensive plan, and there were some clear goals. So we framed things such as X community is looking to grow the business district, and that is our vision for the future. Do you envision working remotely, working from home, requiring library resources to help you with the development of business in your community? That's a bad question that I just framed out loud, but that's kind of the way that we did it. So we used other documents to sort of set the stage to say, we already know your community wants blank, and the library may or may not be able to contribute to that. What's your vision as it connects to that? In other ways, we can use the survey and community conversations as educational and awareness tools. So we could say things like, are you all aware that the library has a library of things? The library occasionally goes through a process in which we put out information to the community to ask about new items. Do you envision this as being a useful or growing collection as part of your library's goals in the next 5 years? So we can provide education along with framing a question. So not everyone has to come into the survey or the community conversations being a library expert, but they may learn something along the way, or they may be introduced to something and go, oh, now that I know that exists, I think that's wonderful. And I think that, yes, let's check the box that this should continue to the future. So are we comfortable with these categories with kind of the rider of maybe some demographic questions? Okay. And you can reserve the right to change your mind at any time too. If we have an aha moment halfway through our conversations, we can do that. So the first thing I want to do is just think about how we're going to split into small groups. And actually, it might make sense to have this be the dividing line, but maybe a swap for some staff members just to even things out.
We're a little heavy on the staff.
What's up?
Said we're heavy on staff.
Heavy on the staff on this side, so I'll trust you all to just sort of
And
split
library board
yourselves.
members, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to maybe so maybe we're like alternating. Oh, I don't want to have to count off by ones. It's not volleyball camp.
Point of view. That gives us in a staff member, and then I think we've got a group.
Okay. So I'll let you get situated, and then I'll tell you what your discussion is. So this will be a good time for us to move, okay? All right. We'll need one person on this side to record, and it does not matter whom. Oh, it's very Halloween.
Yeah, better to stand and sit.
That's right.
Sure, you can live that. Okay, and then I'm gonna give you all a survey.
And yeah, you definitely got it, because, you guys don't have.
You have a recorder on this side. Would you like an orange? Perfect, to match your orange.
Yeah, that's
I'm the
what
writer.
we- yeah, just if they're big, watching.
Vermilion?
Okay, prioritize.
So I think I somehow highlighted
I would really want to know.
Okay, hold on. All right, everybody, let me set the stage for you. Okay, so these are the categories that we kind of just verbally agreed on, right? Usage and spaces, programs, collections, satisfaction, vision. Again, I'll let you reserve the right to add an other if something emerges in your conversation. Your goal is to rank these. So Nothing fancy. Top one's at the top, bottom one's at the bottom. You cannot say that they're all equal, because that's just not true. It's just not real. But find your ranking system. And then once you have your ranking system, I want you to think about the things you want to find out within each of these. So if you say vision for the future is the most important thing, is it vision for the future of library expansion? Vision for the future of the library is a technology and makerspace hub? So as you think about your ranking, think about what you would want to know as those subcategories within those priorities. Now, this is your opportunity to come up with as many things as you want. There is no limit other than your sheet of paper as to what you can come up with. Does that make sense? Okay, so rank it and then think about your subtopics within your group.
Finally open my mouth.
So do we want to do this conversation?
So other people-
Or each person thinks about their 1 through 5, and then we.
And I'm gonna give you time.
So what do you guys think? My
Number
top
1,
vote
then we don't have to
would have been
arm
usage
wrestle
and
over that.
spaces. What are your guys' top votes?
I agree.
Let's do that. Maybe
Oh,
pick
sorry.
up three
Oh,
votes.
Sarah.
Sarah.
My top 2 are usage spaces and vision.
Me too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what do you find your top?
Which one's going to be your
Okay.
number 1?
And then as we kind of go through, we can remember everybody's top. and
My number one.
Figure it out.
Me too.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit easier to
Like
kind of
top
put some
10.
meat on the bones
Yeah.
for usage and
Yeah.
spaces, whereas with vision,
It's bad.
yeah.
I'm very
I-
tied between
I feel like
satisfaction
the
and
staff
vision as my number
knows
two.
an awful lot
They're
about
very
the current
close to
library.
me because I feel
And you
like
already have some
if you're not
vision
if
for
you
what
are
you
not
think the
satisfied
library
with the
can
library
be or can become.
in general,
My
you aren't
concern
really
would be
gonna
that
you're
maybe
gonna have an effect on what you want your vision to be.
you're not
You know what I'm
out-
saying? Does that make
so-
sense? Like if you have
because they,
you are
maybe
unsatisfied
making
with
the
this
decisions
library,
based on
you're gonna
what,
have different ideas of
the
what
faults
the
that they
vision
see, or
of
the
the library
limitations
should
that
be.
they may
I'm
already
not
see in
sure,
the
but I know
future.
that oftentimes
How
when you're
you
inside, you're so
satisfied with it,
close to it,
your
you
vision is gonna
can't
be different. So I feel
look
like
at
they're
it from
very
a 50,000 foot view.
Possibly, if you're highly
Because one
satisfied
of my
with the
top
library,
items
you
would
might
be
have limited
satisfaction.
vision.
That's yes.
In my
You know,
view, if you can understand either why people like.
Satisfaction
libraries
for
that currently
Satisfaction
exist,
would affect the
then you
vision.
might say we can do more and have
If
people
there's
maybe it's
areas that
something
need to
different than
be
you think.
addressed that are not,
Or
are
if you
not
find out that
satisfied,
people
that
aren't
would fall
dissatisfied,
under
you might say, well, that's easy to solve if we did.
That's what yeah.
So are we flip-flopping, or
And
are we
that's
still
what
staying there?
radically alter how you view what you want to do, as opposed
Like
to
throughout, you mean?
Yes.
Like
As
with all of
opposed
the,
to
with all of the other
usage and
categories,
space, from my
satisfaction, I
standpoint.
think so, because you,
I know you said
Because I
it's a
think
because
a
there's
box kind of
satisfaction.
view,
all around.
Right.
but I think it's a rather modern building.
As
That's
opposed to
like-
like
I think it's
implying
in
if we
great
get
shape.
this
It's a
answer,
place I'd
then
love
that
to
means
come
it's
to
satisfied.
because it is so
Right.
Ask the
Now, you
satisfaction
might be looking
question.
at it and say, well, the roof.
Yeah.
leaks.
I feel like you
Carpeting
could
is
add
not
a
great.
satisfaction.
How did you just hit the nail on the head right there?
Yeah, you see that a
Or
lot in
the
surveys.
fact
Now, tell me a little bit
has
more about
problems
why
with it.
you rank
But
it
as the
like you
general
did.
public
I
ranks
like
in
that
on
idea, because we want to
infrequent
know each
basis,
of those
we don't
categories.
necessarily
Are you
see
satisfied?
those
Are you not?
things.
Sure, because it could,
Why?
it could vary.
So our vision
Right.
is.
So maybe
that
satisfaction, like you say,
as
becomes
your
a
vision is that.
subcategory
And I'm
under
not,
each
I
one of
hope this
those.
is coming
How-
across as, it's meant to be,
Yeah.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
so from my standpoint,
I mean,
and the
some-
other one might be,
And then put
what is the
Vision.
vision you
Yeah.
feel
And
is
then
the vision
satisfaction
going forward?
below.
Yeah, like
They don't
on
think
the
on
side.
box enough of what could be, because they've
Do
never
we
thought
want to
about
rename
library is whatever they
elections
have
to
a vision for
something
library.
else? So if we actually
Currently,
leave it
or what
as
their
like
vision
getting a
was
survey, it's just
when
like
they last frequently used it,
Without
and
getting
it might not be today.
lengthy, because it's really, we talk about
Yeah,
materials.
yeah.
Right,
And
it's like
using
language
because
materials
because
all
all the time.
Yeah.
Like say,
Material.
we really
Maybe
hear this kind of
materials,
thing.
yeah.
Or
Collections,
library
I think,
items.
What do you collect? I
And
would
so
know
you'd like to
why.
be able to do more.
Don't worry, I'll
of
take
that.
jargon out.
So-
I always
Okay.
take jargon out.
Those are-
So
The other
materials
thing
would make
is,
more sense.
it's hard
to
for
me
you
as
as
a
staff to say, we should let this go.
But not everything we
because
have
it's
is a
really not,
material either.
So what
satisfied
does
me.
collections actually mean? I guess that's what I don't
It-
know.
but you
Well,
spend a
and
lot
the
of
reason
money
why I
for
said
time and
materials
effort.
is that you've got
And
stuff
maybe it's not
like,
something the
either
community
you
wants,
borrow
but
power
it's something you
tools.
like doing, or
Right,
you
you
think
can also
is
borrow
what you need to
digital
do.
items
And the community says, I
that are
don't care
a
about that.
material item.
And if they come along and say my satisfaction is
So,
over here.
let me help you,
well, maybe we
let me
should
help you,
be
don't let the word be the
those
roadblock.
resources on that.
So if.
Now we're just having fun.
No, no, I know.
That's why
Well,
I
it's cool, but
like
I
that.
wanna move you on to the higher level question that you're actually asking.
Okay.
So if it's, whether we use the word collections or we use the word
What do you think
materials,
we do well?
it's gonna center on whatever your
You're
subject
define it.
is. So if the
Well,
subtopic
there's
is
that,
the
or-
digital collections, the children's
What's
book
the
collection,
public's
the
highest
teen,
priority
the
to-
YA
to
fiction collection.
need that
We're
they
gonna
want you
hone
to
in on
meet?
that and we will take the jargon out so
What
that
need do you-
anybody
What is it
can
that
use
you-
the survey. So
What need do you have at the
Okay.
it's hard to
library?
come up with an example
Why
on the
is it
fly
that
without
you
what's
think
your
the
highest
library needs to be here?
Yeah, don't let the language stop you, use whatever word makes sense to you.
What's-
And then the survey
what's your-
will make sure that
what's your
it's really
greatest
specific
unmet
so
need?
that users can take it.
Yeah,
Yes, all the stuff.
Well, and that was
Right,
going back
right.
to what I said earlier.
Yeah, the greatest
You got it.
satisfaction, like the thing that you're most happy with at the
Right?
library.
Finding your collection of greatest satisfaction.
Yeah.
I have a collection of tropes. It's a collection
And
of
something
certain
that's
things.
not
So
so
we have
bad.
a fiction
A need that's
collection
not
for
needed
adults.
to be met.
Fiction collection for kids.
All right, so it's books,
It's a
whatever.
collection of a category of things.
But I would offer a third one.
Under usage and
What's
spaces.
your number
The
one
thing
thing?
that I would want to know is if someone was coming in,
So they have
coming in the
to pick
library,
one
where
day.
what might I
Would that
most
be?
likely
Yeah,
find?
what is
Where's
it
your
that you
favorite
think
place
the
in
library
library?
should be providing?
Okay.
And you may be already providing that,
Are we supposed to get the others down before we
maybe
go
you're
into
not.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you only
You know what, I think as we're thinking
offer
of
this
them,
much of it.
we'll just go through and throw
You know,
them
we talked about earlier, this could be
Collections and
the
programs.
primary source of local information,
At the bottom, and similar.
the
But
replacement
at
for
least
an
like
open
from my
newspaper.
perspective as like a high school user,
Now,
I feel like whenever I go to
might not be your
the
greatest
YA section,
satisfaction
for
today,
example, which is where I
And
usually
it
am,
might not be the
it's like I
thing
feel
that
like
you're
there's
not
always
being
like a
that.
nice cycling through
But
of
it might
content.
be
I
the
feel like
one
there are
thing
new
that
books
people
pretty
say,
often.
that's what I
I'm
really
never
think
like,
would
oh, I wish there were new books, or I wish there was variety.
There's
Like,
never
there's-
any good stuff here.
No, yeah. I
Right?
feel like there's always been
And
like a different like
we keep
variety, like
talking
I'm never
about
like
wanting
one,
to let
like looking for something.
visitors know what
Right, right.
And
is
it's
being
good,
offered.
I'm
Yeah.
expecting when
So
I
you said being
look
the
for a
center
book,
of
that
information,
there's gonna
I'm
be
thinking
current books.
Mhm.
that's much wider than just,
And there are.
Kristen Hannah's The
the
Women.
circulation of, where do you go to eat, where the, what are the parks like? And all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of.
So we're gonna throw satisfaction underneath the different
Yeah.
ones. Okay, so
Serving the city programs.
programs and then collections on the
Or
bottom.
should have.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. I really feel like they're very,
You could become
number
the
three
tourism
is
center.
fine. You know what I mean?
So maybe we
What
do
of
programs and
the
collections.
things, what
I
do
don't
you
know.
feel?
I'm just saying, like, for me
We'll see what they come up
personally,
with.
yeah, they're very.
Well, since this is a long-range planning.
Because I feel
the
like
vision
people are
for the
pretty.
future.
happy
And
with
that fits into the satisfaction also.
And that's not what
I
we need
agree
to
with you
focus on.
on
I do really feel
what
like
does the
our
community
space is
see
super
as the
limited.
vision going
I
forward. My
feel like
fear
if
is
you're gonna
that
ask people their favorite place,
people are
super.
looking at that through the
But
rear
ask
view
how many
mirror.
times
This is
they've come
what
into
I've been
the
doing
library
all
looking
along,
for
so
a
of
place
course
to
that's what I
study,
see.
there's no.
Or it's what I experienced at the library that I really liked when I was in this phase of life, and I'm
How
not
can
in
we
that
give
phase
you
of
more
life anymore,
access
but
to
I'm headed
quiet
over
study?
there.
Place it private,
And
quiet
what do I
study
need
places,
to
people
help
want
me get
roses.
and
Don't
enjoy
really wanna
life
go
over
sit
there
in the library, but they
in
will.
my next phase?
People don't
And I
care.
don't know that people
But
think
it's,
that way.
and this is,
So
our study room
you could
meetings,
ask
especially
questions
once
like
we
that,
reopen.
and you may only get one
after
answer, but
COVID,
it
and
might
more
be
and more
the
people
gem
were-
amongst the needle in the haystack.
That's
It's the
really
one thing
like-
you really want to know.
Wi-Fi access.
So
is
how do we
great.
want?
Wi-Fi access
the
is
rating of the
really
survey?
good,
How do we
yeah,
want
like,
direct
and we have, now
vision?
we have like wireless printing, although the
Like
price
I would
is the
direct it
thing.
as.
But you know, like, I feel like
Maybe ask something to
as
the
far as
effect of,
adults, we have those adults.
when you're
that
10
try
years
to
older than you are
every day
today,
and
what
use-
do you like the library?
read the paper, right?
Oh.
And
Well, I
they
guess
sit
we
by our
went from
front
five
desk, which is
years.
favorite place.
Yeah, okay.
There are people that come in and sit in place or one way, but put together the puzzles,
What 5 years older?
right? Favorite place. Then the next people are like, is there a study room? And I'm like, yeah.
Just
Work for mobility, like from like
Over
a
the
high
next
school
5
experience,
years.
like I like will come all the time with my friends and I'm like,
What?
is there a room, is there a room?
Yes.
And then you have to
What
tell me,
could the
yeah, not really
librarian-
right now.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's because people like, I know like, because I Those don't come in the library, but we really do.
You do.
What's the
And
service
especially
the
to study,
library
and then
can
like
provide?
study groups are really
That's
popular,
gonna
so
help
people
provide.
want to.
Yeah, it's just
Do you have to
service
have a
though,
room
because I would
for-
see.
Okay,
So if we had
replace
more
the
heights,
service with
would
something
you-
else, but you're saying, what do you want them
pods
to
in
do
there,
for
there's
you
only a couple of them.
in the near future?
So they're like.
They're always
full.
used, too.
They're and there's always one
Where you
person
see
who
the
doesn't
library
need that
in
whole
5
thing,
years.
and they're always.
Where and how, or
Because they've been.
It's not so much where they see the library, but where did, how it's
Yes.
So
And
where
but
do
like
they
when
see
I work
them-
on Monday
where do they
nights,
see
I
themselves in relation
tons
to
of
those?
groups.
Yeah, I get where you're
coming in
going.
looking for
Right.
stuff.
How do they
How do you
interact
see
with
yourself
it?
Yeah.
I think we
interacting
need
with
to
the
ask
library in the
those
next
like
5 years?
Yes.
other
Oh,
questions, like
yeah.
not what we love about it.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Interacting, how do you see yourself
How can we make
interacting with the
this
library
space better?
in the next
What are they
5
looking
years?
for?
What are you looking for in the space of the library? Like,
Yeah.
what?
and I'm putting everything into use.
I think back to when I was a student in college, I go to the library.
Study, Carol.
Like by the children's section, there's like one little table.
Building?
All right, Sarah.
Yeah. 5 years.
Those are really, those are pretty.
We better get a really good experience.
From my perspective, the city community doesn't have to build another library, but what if there were 3,000 square feet of it?
So you said you've got the first.
And you rented that for 2 years, service there, because you want to serve a different part of the library. A brand new building,
When you do come to the library.
and renting a space for 2 years is a whole lot cheaper than building a whole new building.
It can be a long
And
and that can be,
No,
that can
no.
be part of the,
My mom
part
was
of the
like, I can't get
exploration.
this, and she worked on a puzzle for like a month, and then I'm like, Mom, that thousand piece puzzle you donated, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the library.
and if you feel like something is such a low priority that it doesn't warrant a whole lot of questions or need attention, that's okay too.
And I don't know
So
how
you don't have to like,
incorporate that.
Is it free?
not everything has to be part of.
So there are some free
how you
ones,
make
and
it, so
there's
you can
some
drop something off if you
that
feel
you
like
pay
that's.
for. So
That's
this
a
room
good
you have to
solution.
pay for,
I think
and there's very division
Yeah,
rates, so if you're a nonprofit, you get a discount.
Because you don't wanna make
Franklin,
it
you get a
too
discount. If you're a
complicated.
business in Franklin, you get a discount.
But in your vision, going
And then
back to
you
your
also have to
use
pay
of
for
space.
the
Do you
Well,
see
that's
the-
the next one.
Well, no, but no,
But
but
like our
in
large
terms of
study rooms,
vision,
which
do you
make
see the
accommodate
library
15
expanding
people, those are
in
free.
the next
And
5 years?
condo rooms utilize them.
No, I'm saying that's
Like,
the
all
question
kinds
you
of-
asked.
Oh, yeah, my.
We only have,
Or do you see the
and then you
library
have study
renovated?
groups who also want to use it.
And
So
modernize
it's like, you could have
Because somebody might say, well, it doesn't need to be.
like real estate.
I mean, a lot of people think this is like you said.
A lot of people
Library
don't see
just the
that.
way it is. They
I know,
don't
right?
see-
Let me just jackhammer it.
I think once you do it, really would be like, oh.
If I said, hey, if I said try to steer a stroller through the children's area.
So you wanna do an obstacle
Yeah.
course as
Sometimes
part of
people
your
might have
community
ideas like, I
conversation.
Kinda
know,
like-
Rachel was.
The public doesn't always see all the words that you
Right,
say.
right, you're here in the building.
Library in Madison.
And I try to like
They have
see
resident
some
artists.
spaces for you,
Mhm.
so like.
Or-
There's a few libraries.
You
out
know,
there that
I just saw
It is
something, I can't remember what, there was
You know,
a
definitely
meeting
like-
or something like that, but
Meeting rooms, study.
organization with the art stuff
Mhm.
is doing different.
Or
they
do
have
we
like-
need more of that?
They're always
If
looking for
they're
places
all-
where we can now, okay,
So
we will
physical
now bring
spaces
art to
are
your,
physical spaces meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they're like,
to your group.
yeah.
Especially in
The
those
band.
places where maybe
Or do we
they
need
don't
more
have a
meeting
library.
spaces
Or they do have a
because
library,
so many
but they
people
don't
are
have like
in their
the
homes
wealth of
working
stuff
at
that
home
we
and
have
are
here. So
not
it's like, oh, yeah, sure, we'll go ahead.
I think maybe the first thing
So-
to find out is
Types of things that maybe people
how
have
they
seen
use the library.
in other places that.
The way I typically frame that
Don't you think? I mean,
phrase
that's
to
kind of the first
to
thing you
this
wanna
type
find
of
Well,
out.
art
I guess
is seeing marketplace
technically you would be
opportunities
finding that out in
mimicked
satisfaction
or matched at
vision.
your library. And so in some ways, we see that as
How
like,
are you planning
people
on
expect to
using
see
the library
streaming, and so they're like,
over
does
the
my
next
library
5
have streaming
years? And then
It
is
could be
our physical space
art,
going
it could
to
be music, it could be a performance troupe. And so
Okay,
matching
so
those
fulfilling that
opportunities
need.
with
I view
library
this as people
opportunities,
looking
that's
at
the way I
art.
would frame it. And of course,
Okay.
we would put that in about 8th grade language
What
in
do
a
you
survey
think the
type
future should
question,
be?
once
Yeah.
I got to that.
Is there space going to
I
be
was at a library in Chicago where we had a different
Sufficient
traveling
for
art display every
people's
month,
vision?
so.
Can you ask
So
a
it would
question like,
be-
is,
Like
ask a
how
question
in the
like,
summer we have
do the
the
library spaces?
honor flight display,
Mm-hmm.
that would be every
Your
month we
needs
have to,
currently?
there were a lot of libraries
Or is
But
there
we would have to
something,
find,
you know,
like,
something
gallery.
like
Yes,
something
like
like
gallery.
that?
Wouldn't
I just
parents
don't
be
know the
excited
way
to see their kids' art?
Yeah.
Because they were all full.
I was
On
just
the
at
walls.
Tulsa
Possible,
and they
thought.
had, one of the schools had like all their art.
How could the
like an art
library
show
be a
in
Google
their
source
lobby
for
area, which is really cool.
Yeah.
How
And
much
I've
of the
seen it
local
done, I
information
know,
is
and I've seen it done
available
like a
online
gallery
to
show where it's
Yeah.
like, it's opening tonight and there's flowers and lemonade.
Which is
I
really
think
cool.
the high school
You know,
has
think
one.
of
They had
AI
a
as
gallery.
Yeah.
a massive.
So you guys have
database.
everything ranked,
How can
yes?
the community?
Yeah.
Okay, keep
access
plugging
that
away.
database from
Community
their-
artists,
from their
I
home?
worked at.
You have your items ranked up.
Every month they brought in. a new
Okay, we should probably
artist.
skip
Then, because you're gonna keep working on these.
Okay,
I wanna
okay.
make sure you guys have a chance to talk to each other.
Okay, so
Number
there-
four.
Come in and-
More for me would it be
But you have to
probably
have the bandwidth to do that.
Right.
Somebody has to be
Yeah.
able
Right.
to find the
Right,
artists and
okay.
bring them in and set it up.
aren't
Yes.
just what's in this
And when you
building.
have like,
It's also
I don't know, I
online.
think we have 15 to 20
Yeah.
librarians, you can do that.
So then programs.
You know, and we're all like,
We know programs.
How about a vision to
But
have
we
this place
may wanna know
staffed
where we
such
go
that we
with
can
that.
do,
And
that we match the
graphics
staffing, match the staffing with the community need.
Or
Do
is
you
that?
have room? Have you
Insert.
hired
I
more
say
staff or
inserted.
Yeah, I think we
Maybe
could
that's
sprinkle
something
it
that any adult
throughout
area
maybe to
They're
kind
highly
of,
and I
mobile.
think we could shove another person in
questions,
children's.
then it would
Brittany and
be.
Sarah.
I know, I feel offended when people ask.
I heard my name. Did you? I did.
Good, I'm talking about you.
Good.
My ears were ringing.
Ringing, you were like buzzing.
What are they doing? I don't know what staff is.
Burning.
And
Have
demographic
appropriate staff
information.
to add on new programs and new
Sprinkle
ideas.
throughout.
Or I would say
Different
that could
programs
be,
and
that could be a
understand
category unto itself,
You know,
or it could
like,
be the
we need
open or
more
the closer to
bodies
the
to do
survey.
that, you know?
Um,
So, yes, I think that
There's,
would be.
there's a couple of ways that we could work it into community conversations, because again, we won't get everyone to participate in that piece of the community conversation. But there are some ways that we
One of the
can
reasons I go to the library so often
simply
is
break
because
things
the kids,
down in a way that
like, so
doesn't feel
many
painful
other
for
high
people
schoolers,
as a
like,
participation
for only
point.
kids
Sometimes we do it through sticky notes or stickers, and we
they
kind
all
of set
need
up
to have a certain
grids and
number of
say,
tutoring
where do you
hours,
fall
and a
on
lot
the age
of
spectrum, and
Mr.
just let
Decker,
people
who's the
fill in their
NHS
sticker where they feel.
Like we'll connect
Sometimes we
to
might do it like, are
NHS
you
students
18
to
to
elementary
30,
school
are
kids will meet
you
at the library and
31
learn
to whatever, and then have them
And I
fill
feel
their
like
sticker
one
in.
program could be like connecting
The
girls,
conversational
like people,
questions
adults
can be a
who,
little
like,
more fluid
like
as far as
aren't
like,
able,
who else goes
they
to
don't
the
know
library?
that
What libraries do you go
that
to?
service exists, like if we connect
So
them
again,
to
depending
different
on what you want to
things,
know.
I can meet here and kind of,
Yeah.
is this your
home
and it wouldn't be like
library?
a librarian would have to work to facilitate it, it would just be like something.
Is this
and
your
then
library
are
of
they
choice?
need to work
Or
out so
like-
that like,
So it's more of a community
To know
service
whether they
opportunity.
were,
yeah,
you
So it's like
utilize
kind of
it
parents
for
can, like,
library,
reach
you
out,
know,
be like,
in
oh,
Lawrence
my student
County
needs help,
or
and then it would be
libraries
easy
outside
for
of
some
Lawrence
people,
County.
like National Honor Society.
Well, and again, I would say
Actually,
there,
I really just like.
there's verbal
the
answer.
home
And you know,
library. I feel
tutoring
like that
can go
part's
to
yeah.
all
okay.
different levels. You
Yes.
can have somebody that offers
Right, and
these
some of that we
kids that
can
are
pull
taking
from
courses in
like
college.
college.
yeah.
or
Yeah.
other
It could be all
data
sorts of-
points that are gonna
Getting
tell you
ready
about
for
the
AP
whole
exams.
library user
Right.
base
Yeah.
versus
And that's
the
what they're
20
having
people in the
space.
community conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
two programs, yeah. You could even, I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, you may be
the
aware
Newport
of
and
information
Franklin,
available
but
to you
I have
that
a friend in Minnesota.
Non-library staff people don't know. For
Well, I'm not
instance,
staff.
Necessarily tutors, but sort of.
And what I would say is in the survey, there is something valuable to know.
Yep.
Is this 90% filled out by people who are 65 plus?
Yeah, in a survey, I
Right.
get, I just think it's easier to
I
ask.
mean, there's
It's
definitely
probably easier to put
lots
some
of
of those,
opportunities, I think,
a
that
couple
we
of them
haven't
in a
explored
survey.
here
But
in those
I-
kind of programs. I'm
I
not sure
don't know.
that's.
Part
I'll
of it
have to
can-
see how they're brought up. and
Well, part of it could
Or
be
two
partnering
different
too. I know
Well,
that
and
there's
that's where we
also
can put a question mark
organizations that
next to
do literacy
demographics,
services.
because
So
we
it's
may
just like
find that
maybe
we've got
one day a week,
questions that fill
there's
in.
somebody from
Yeah,
that
what do we
organization.
wanna know?
And now,
And then we
okay,
might
we can't have that
we
meeting
might
because
wanna know
that's
their
there for
location
this
the
group
most, for their
that just
age the
does.
most.
Well, the other one question is,
Yeah.
when's the last
More
time you
community
how long
services.
ago has it been since you used the library?
Sure, that's another
Walk
aspect.
into.
Right.
There's a library without walking in.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so has it been
Right.
6 months, has it been 1 year, has it been
Right.
5 years, has
Yeah.
it been 10 years since you walked into the library? And then you could begin to start saying, well, if it's been that long, why aren't you coming?
Yeah, then I also don't care what you say, staff.
If she
You
was like,
can't
I
tell
visited
me that
once
you're
in the
not
last 5 years.
Satisfied if you haven't walked into the library.
Yeah.
Okay, both groups, let's hold up for 1 second, and I'm gonna challenge you to give 60 seconds or less on your ranking. And then we're gonna go right back to work on the next discussion topic. So 60 seconds or less, how did you rank? And you might just flip it around and read it. That's one way to do it. Oh, sorry, it's a little floppy. The humidity. All right, how did you rank it?
All right, we ranked satisfaction, vision, usage spaces, collections, and programs, and then we would put demographics with a question mark. Satisfaction, though, is what's your greatest satisfaction, a need that's not being met, one thing the library should provide, like what is the number one thing that you feel that a library should provide? And then vision, how do you see yourself interacting with the library in the next 5 years?
Okay, great,
That's where we are.
great. All right, and how did you rank?
Well, we did usage and spaces on top. Figuring that was the critical thing we keep hearing about, how we don't have enough space for students to get together and study. We don't have enough room for everybody who wants to be in a program, those types of things. We had vision next. We wanted people to then, once we understand how to use the library, and start thinking about the types of things that the library could do, like what your ideas or suggestions would be. We talked about other libraries we've been to, worked in, what types of things that they offer. Programs, maybe some unique programs, maybe we'll do tutoring or language or citizenship or those types of things, and then collections. We figured that we were going to have satisfaction as being a thing that we would ask under each one of these, as opposed to having satisfaction being a separate one.
I like that thinking. Okay, great. So you both have a really good starting point for what we're doing as our next discussion. So you're building off of what you already have in front of you with your current small group, and now you're going to start formulating questions that you want to ask. And you will probably continue fleshing out these subtopics. So don't think of this as an endpoint for your first sheet. Think of it as a continuation. Use as many sheets of paper as you need. But you're going to start formulating the questions you want to ask. And the main thing I want to tell you is this thing at the bottom. This is very hard. It seems so easy, but it is very, very hard. So focus on the purpose of what you want to know rather than the perfection of the sentence that you're writing. So those of you who are grammarians and wordsmiths, this is very hard for us, okay? But focus on what you want to get at, the purpose of your question, rather than the mechanics of said question. Does that make sense? Okay, then in the middle of this, there's that how. So this is where you're going to start thinking like, is this a question that's better for a survey? Is this a question that's better for a conversation? Is this a question that can be answered by a yes or no? Is this a question that should be answered by a 5-minute dialogue with a diverse group of people? So you'll start thinking about, however you want to mark it, which questions fit with which method the best. Does that make sense? All right, I will problem solve right along with you because again, see point number 3, this is hard. And then to nudge you along, I also have sample questions. This is kind of my master list. So they are really ugly because I use them for all sorts of things. So you'll see lots of slashes and question marks and parentheses. But your group can share that. You'll also see some other topics that come up. And then same thing, this is a cheat sheet that you can use as you need help. This is my stockpile of questions that I use. I use them for all sorts of purposes, so they won't make sense for some uses. Some more clearly survey questions, some more clearly a conversation.
Well, we already have a vision.
But this will give you some ideas of how you might start framing your questions.
And really in satisfaction, you can also
And if
put
you
this
do
in
take
a
any notes
question
on this, I
board.
will collect these at the end, so you can jot notes on there as well. So if there's questions you guys really like, circle it, highlight it, whatever.
That would be
So we
right.
And then if you take any notes on there, questions that you all like, I'll collect these at the end and then I'll already know. Okay, you're
Now you're asking multiple.
What type
I
of
know,
usage
so many
space
reporting
questions would be
strategies.
better for a
So
focus?
library building services programs,
Because I'm
collections,
thinking the
media,
ones we have up there, that can be pretty much, you just,
Are the library hours convenient, adequate,
Yeah.
is the library
Yeah, what do you
keeping
think?
safe? The library provides value to the
We wanna do
library.
do we have to create the?
Quantitative,
groups
does
right
the
away?
library offer an opportunity?
No. What you could do is just as you jot something down, you could be like, we think this is an awesome survey question. Or,
I would say too.
absolutely, yeah. You could use color coding, letter coding, just tell me what system you use and I will use it.
Question.
Not only when was the last time you used, but how frequently?
Quite a few usage,
Yeah.
questions
If you only
here.
come once every 5 years, that's probably not
Yeah, well, she must be-
We still need, we
I
do
think
still
we
need
need
to
to
know
know
things from
that
libraries,
person.
physical spaces, we kind of.
So yeah, that's good.
And I should mention, do your priorities in order.
I'm putting in
Don't
when was
worry
the
about
last
the low priorities, focus on the top.
Okay.
Yeah, how do you use the space?
And you say,
What
we're-
kind of services?
I can highlight any that we
You
would
could be
want.
using Libby or.
That's true, I mean, they might think of the library as the building, but it's.
How long are you here for? I think that when you come to the library with services.
First one, how do you use
Yeah.
the space is really.
Yeah.
What part are we working on right now?
Are we working on this at a
So,
Yeah, I would say work on
So
your,
how long you-
if you have a top priority,
Do we track how
list
many times
questions
they
for
use the
that.
library?
Greatest satisfaction with the library.
We could.
Do you use it daily,
Because
weekly,
that's, what is your
monthly?
greatest satisfaction would be a fill-in?
How often, I think that's.
Maybe would that be a
Okay.
good,
Surveys.
would that be a good
Surveys.
conversation?
Especially if you're gonna be kind of
Conversation
putting people in different groups.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, like
As opposed to a survey question?
Yeah, because that's
It's
probably.
pretty open-ended.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the whole
Anything else
satisfaction
usage-wise that
is a
jumps out at you?
conversational kind of thing as opposed to.
So it's conversations. I'm gonna try to see
How often? How often?
Say, how frequently do you use the
Yeah, we did
library
the
and
how
when was the
long.
last time?
Like
That
how
might be a
long
good
are
survey.
you
Oh,
stay? Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't like much with these usage, but I don't think any of them besides that first one really would be too.
When was the last time?
I don't perceive us changing.
So the data that you already have, do you know how often a particular library card is used? Can
That's
you
very
pull that out? So you know?
You can't invest in any.
I know you can't, do you?
Yeah, and should you?
That must have
Do you
been,
know
somebody must have been
who your top
going
10
for
users
sculpture
are?
outside.
Do you know?
That's my guess, at some community.
Isn't it usually a donation?
12 times a year. I don't know what the category breaks down, because I don't know what your data looks like. But do you even look at the data? Do you look at
Like
it?
when we
Not
bought the
often, I
library,
mean,
this
you know,
was
we have an idea of what
purchased.
our users
Okay.
are.
Initially, yeah, so,
Because you're saying you have all the data's there, if you aren't looking at it, I'm not sure then you're analyzing it either.
You know, and because you're also doing strategic
Is that
planning,
data?
I'm thinking that there's probably more times during the year you could just shoot out a simple survey, you know.
Well,
It's in the
you
winter
can run
time.
a list.
Hey, someplace come.
You know
Run a
how
list.
You know, just some simple things where they can kind of get some feedback as opposed to some of the stuff, like you said, that's on it. It's like-
When I was in the
yeah.
industry one time,
The stuff that we're talking about, like people come here and they can't find a place to use the library the way they need to use it. That's a big use.
I feel
and we
like
break them
too,
into
like,
equal groups
you
of
could
10.
ask, and this could be maybe a community conversation where it's like,
Who are the
what
top,
improvements would you
the
like
top
to see
10%,
on the
and what
library?
is their
That's a
perspective
good-
to
in
the
the
next group?
building,
And the next
you know,
group,
like that would be a
oftentimes that really
community
gave you
conversation.
an interesting
Because, like,
vision of.
You know,
So is there
like,
thought-
maybe
is
there's
there
also
thought in
like,
that
you know,
to
like,
find out
sustainable, do you want future improvements
the
to be
top-
do you want to see?
these top checkout people,
Do you want to see solar
what
panels?
would
Do you
would their
want to see
feedback
charging
differ
stations
from
out there?
the
Like,
middle of
it's
the
something
pack
that
or
you
the
have
lower
to
end?
Or you may
Or-
find that
Just
in a community of
not like
36,000.
too much, but like.
That
And
only
those sections
500
are
people
intended
are
to be
really
like,
using the
you
library.
give
The
a
rest aren't.
response and then
Yes,
these
which
things
again,
are great.
Out of 36,000, how many have cards?
So you're kind of thinking about who are the repeat,
As well.
so unique users versus
Because that's
repeat
more important about
users.
the library.
Groups.
Yeah.
Repeat users, groups of users.
Right, but I'm thinking in the aggregate of, we know that we have 700 people that visit the library once a month.
I don't know if we could ever
And
do
1,500 visit over the course of a year. Of course, these are very small numbers, but you're seeing that there's an 800 person difference between those two groups. Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I'm kind of getting.
Okay.
Yeah, neither of these methods are
Not
perfect.
very many.
No, but I'm saying, you don't have to survey that because you already have that data, and it just takes somebody going in and analyzing that data.
But then the question we would want answered in that is why, or the question we would want answered in is what's the difference?
Well, we do have a little, we do have a charging station. That's over by
I'm
the
not a
adult
data
centers.
analyst,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
You know, if you said to
Although
yourself
I
that
don't think it has
when you
an
saw the
Apple
data,
one on
the
it.
demographics or what the data
But we
looks
could
like,
maybe look at
and you
investing
find
in
out
that.
that there's a really small group that is really using the library, and a large group, then I would want to know, why aren't these other people using the library? How do you increase?
Very specific.
Why aren't they?
But then how do you get your survey, or how do you get your consumer groups to help
A
you
lot
answer
of
that?
questions on the
If all you're gonna do is get answers from
They're
your
mostly
power users,
surveys.
then you may not really have.
Then it's all.
And it's not the same
Well,
page,
that's why, you know,
so
we
there's
do,
more
we'll put a link out in the city newsletter to larger Facebook pages.
Maybe survey to the
Yeah.
different groups,
Well, I guess we can.
a sample of each of those groups. If you took all your users,
And I promise you, we're gonna get to that. I
Yeah,
wanna
I'm
focus
like,
on this
we were
task.
on the
Because we're diverting just a little bit. We're gonna
How
get to
would
that
you
in
see
5
this?
minutes.
How do you see this
Yeah.
one being best?
Because I feel like Franklin is.
The vision,
Yeah.
Yeah, posted in both.
definitely
Community
growing.
and the survey.
So aspirational questions are a good one for an open-ended question,
Like all
but
that other community.
open-ended about something specific. So open-ended about a specific element of a goal that you may all want information about. Open-ended question
Yeah,
about a
that would
specific
be a very.
facet of the library that you want to think about.
How can
Because if
the
you just say, what
library
is
be
your hope for the
prepared for the
community? I mean, people are gonna give you things that the library has zero control over. They're gonna say, we want a city center, we want a water park, we want whatever, and the library.
Or what do you think the purpose of the library will be? And
So my advice in the vision is to say,
Library.
my advice in the vision is something to say like, what do you think should be the library's priority in the next 5 years?
Okay.
What do you think,
Library.
how would you
Saved it.
reimagine
It
the
says,
library's building
The
in the next 5
library
years?
is more than.
And there's no
books.
right or wrong facet to
think
focus
some
on, but
people
leave it in
think
a
about it
specific
as just a
lane.
place for a book.
People
And
that
again,
don't
don't
use
worry,
the
I will be
library
helping with
think
this
that
part. This is just to get what you all
So
think.
for new people who don't understand.
Okay, I'm gonna give you just a couple more minutes because we have one more topic to get through before we're done.
Yeah.
So what were they again?
Questions
What
on
is
how
changing?
friendly do you read?
Again, I want you guys to decide what you think your strongest sort of section
That
of
was
questions
under-
is. So you all decide what you think you have nailed here to share with the other group. What I'll do is take photos of all of these and you'll get to see all of the feedback from
Yeah.
both groups, okay?
qualitative, is the library staff helpful, welcoming, friendly? Our library spaces are
Yeah.
comfortable and useful. The library programs present by.
Oh, I'm just highlighting that, you
Oh,
don't have
okay.
to remember that. So, yeah, when you think a visit to your ideal library would
people have a
look
10-minute
like.
visit, or
That's a really good.
That's a good
what's
one.
their average?
And that's a good community conversation.
It's just that they're using it.
Well, and that too is gonna
Well, another thing that I
depend
think
on,
about,
if you're a person who
although
has 20 books on hold, runs in, checks them
If
out,
the
might
library
be
wasn't here,
satisfied at
Yeah.
a 5 out of 5.
what
mean,
type,
it
what
is
what type
still-
of an, what type of an impact
When you come to
would
story
that
time and
have
stay for an hour and a
on
half
you?
and you think,
I think that's a
this
really
library
good
sucks, it's
community
loud, it's messy,
conversation, because I
and I
feel
come
like
here
that
every week for an
can-
hour, but it's a 1 out of
that
5.
can-
So satisfaction visiting that.
That
might
and-
not matter.
I mean, I don't think the last uplifted. I mean, I get what you're saying, but like,
Yeah.
What their experiences and what their satisfaction with that experience is, you may not understand.
So the nuance of that is best in a one-on-one
and some
interview.
communities have one.
So you have to find core users so you can really sit down and tease that out. A survey is just not gonna get to that with the wide audience that we have.
I mean, you talk about one-on-ones, but you might talk about later.
But-
Yes, I will.
Yeah, I do think that.
For one-on-ones.
And I think it could be a powerful way, especially as we identify these personas, to think about who could be representative of those groups and tell us those deep answers of like, what do I do while I'm here?
Because
What
they don't
what
have
am I
any idea that
satisfied
you
with?
could
What
be
am I
reading on like.
satisfied about
And they
that?
don't,
Yeah.
they know.
We could seriously form
They
it.
do. And like, I have
So
friends
I
that
do
have
want you to
Audible
pick what you
subscriptions
think you
and I
have
don't
nailed
know
here,
what all
your best
that
question
stuff.
or
Like,
your best
I'm
facet.
paying for that.
And then I'm gonna ask you to
Yeah,
report to
their
the other
Kindle
group, okay?
subscription, I don't know if there's a Kindle.
And then we've got one more
whatever, they
topic
buy
to get
books.
through.
I'm like, you can just.
Do you guys have your question ready? You're good? Okay.
I think we're good on our most important.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so yeah, think about what you feel like you
Yeah.
feel really confident about.
So our favorite questions are there, one-on-one.
What I'll do is take photos of all the notes so that you can share between both groups,
I like that.
rather than doing a literal report out.
Like every day. Oh, I'm sure she does too.
I can ask for that.
Because even though I haven't seen her in that, I've been reading one of the things.
Do you guys have consensus over here? Okay.
What's
Fine.
what's the question that is our best question?
I still like, I like this one.
We
Okay.
changed it around a little bit.
Okay.
They've just never.
All right, group with the blue writing, blue group. What's your question that you feel best about, or your facet that you feel best about?
Can we put two? I mean,
If you can do it fast, because we only have 5 minutes and we have one more discussion.
Superstars.
Just pick one.
Consider one fine. That would, is that?
What are you
Yeah.
looking for in library
Yeah.
spaces?
What are you looking for in library
Open-ended
spaces?
Community conversation.
Community conversation, okay.
Uh,
And what do you feel best about?
What do you think should be the library's priority in the next 5 years?
Okay, great. All right. Is this hard?
Oh, there's so many questions.
It's hard to stay on task.
We should have said this, hold on.
My group can stay on task.
Oh, I can't use these. Is there best?
You had, what? Take any notes, like I said, take any notes on my sheets. I will collect those at the end and just reflect things that you starred and liked of those.
It was really easy to go down rabbit holes.
It is. And surveys, one thing that I will tell you, so I do this part for a living, but I'm not a data analyst either. And so some of this is both art and science, right? Teasing out the language, finding out what we want to know. That's why I always come back to purpose. Even if you don't have maybe a perfectly framed question, if you understand the purpose behind it, you're going to get closer to a good question. Data scientists, they're excellent at this. But I can't promise you that I'm that. But I can promise you that I understand libraries and I understand that language piece to get at what people will respond with. So if you want to make yourselves comfortable back at your seats, we're going to finish our conversation today with the promotion and participation. And this comes down to our personas as well, right? How are we going to reach the people that we want to reach with us? So first off, this is the easy question. And this is probably going to be framed more towards staff than anyone. What are the library communication channels that are already available to us? Do you have a website?
Yes.
Do you have a newsletter?
Yes.
Is it print or electronic?
Could be electronic.
I think we should do both.
Don't you do an e-news?
Hold on, I'm just asking questions that are yes or no. Hold on. And we have 3 minutes, so I want to whip through this. Do you have an email list that you use?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have community partners?
Yes.
Do you have social media?
Yes.
What kinds?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, X.
I'm still calling it Twitter. Do you have a access to signage outside of your library?
Yeah.
City Hall could be a possibility.
But not really. Signs, actual signs.
Wait a minute, is the question, are you using communications?
Do you
outside?
have access? It's a yes or no.
Oh,
Do you have
do you have
access to
access?
signage outside your building?
Like a
We could. at City
lighted
Hall.
sign?
Let's just think about this as a big bucket. Do you have a billboard, a digital sign, a firehouse with a digital sign,
Yeah, that's.
high school with a digital sign?
Yes.
Yes.
The firehouse has promoted stuff for us.
Okay, we don't have to ask with a question mark. Do you have access to signage outside your building? Yes. Okay. All right. Do you have access to signage inside your building?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What have I missed about library communication channels that are already available to you?
City newsletter.
We have a library and a city newsletter. So I believe we might miss
So our wish list
the
is,
survey.
Is there a school district newsletter?
Yes.
okay.
Do you have access to that?
Yes.
See that?
I think it's in.
It's an e-newsletter,
Yeah.
so it's all electronic.
Like I said, I don't see.
Okay, what else would be on our wish list? Things that we may or may not have access to, but we might be thinking about. as ways to send a link, have a paper flyer. What else would be places that we could distribute this? Is there an ADRC, a meal site, a senior center? Is there a summer lunch place for kids and families? Is there a park gathering place?
Kayla's.
No, but it's closed for a month. Yeah.
Do you have some kind of, the community gets together for the 4th of July parade? Do you somehow get involved, sending a message out in that?
Yard signs.
Well, okay, so here's one question, timeline. What, this can be before, during, and after community conversations. They are 2 separate channels, so they do not have to happen at the same time. I usually say about a month is long enough, because your peak participation is whenever your peak promotion is. But 3 to 4 weeks is typical for clients in this with this type of survey and your size of your community. So yeah, I mean, is there a parade, a community gathering, fireworks?
4th of July parade.
Yeah.
You got the 4th of July parade, you've got, 100,000 people go to the St. Martin's Fair every year. That's another place that you could reach people.
Milk run games.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah.
Milk run
The
games.
movie
You got it.
nights, or the band.
Summer concerts.
Summer concerts.
Okay.
Trunk or treat, national, well, no, trunk or treat's too late.
Then-
National.
Here.
Yeah, National Night Out.
I'm talking about the event
The
at the
milkman
rec.
game.
We're doing
What
our
do you think about
outdoor.
So there might be some opportunities for some on the ground engagement maybe in this wish list. So I'm gonna develop this a little bit further. But obviously, once we use all the library channels, it means that we're hitting library users, whether they're casual or high users. So the biggest thing to think about is if you want non-user responses, and not every community cares deeply about their non-users. So that's really a question I'm putting back on all of you. The more non-users you want to reach, the more channels we have to open, the more times we have to hand something to somebody or hand sell this survey. So that goes to this participation piece that's next, okay? How does our committee support this effort? How does the library and the library board support this effort? How does the municipality support this effort? And who can we gently, not so gently, ask to help us in this process? So my challenge to you to first start is think about the people in your own networks that you could ask to share this information. Even just sharing it yourself, whether it's verbally through a flyer, on your Facebook, via email, who else in your life, think about who can you share this with. And that could be one person, or it could be one person who can reach 100 people. All of those are successful asks. The next thing in participation is thinking about how you all will not only support the survey, but the community listening sessions. If our community listening sessions are well attended, I'm just one gal, and I only have 2 ears and 1 hand that can write, because I can't write with my left hand at all. So thinking about how you can support the community listening sessions, you can be a greeter, you can be a note taker, you can be a snack helper, you can be a friendly face. All of those things are most welcome during our community listening sessions. And again, you can participate, you're in the room, you can certainly chime in. Know that your greatest contributions are here in this room, and we want to hear from those who come to that community listening session. But it's incredibly helpful to me to have other people in the know about our process in that room. So if any of you can commit to coming to those, I would welcome your participation.
Would participants feel like if a staff member was in there, would they feel like less inclined to like converse?
You
or
planning
whatever,
on
you know what I mean?
advertising that you're a staff member, or does
No, well, if I'm
everybody know
helping
you?
out with like
Everybody
snacks
knows.
or like
Yeah.
stuff like that, then I mean, I don't have to wear my name tag.
So
But
one
I
of
just didn't know if that is something
Yeah.
that maybe would turn people off from.
It can on an individual basis. One of the things that I do as I open these sessions is we do a little housekeeping about informed consent, that by being here, you've agreed to participate and have your feedback recorded, it's de-anonymized, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, there are volunteers and library staff that will be in this room, but I, as your third party facilitator, am the audience. So you can feel free to speak freely. Critiques are welcome because we can't know how to correct things if we don't hear about those critiques. And then I always leave my business cards and say, if there's something you didn't feel comfortable about sharing, here's my contact so that you can reach out to me directly and I'll be glad to take that feedback into consideration. So I try to work around that, but sometimes, right? I mean, no different than like if your boss is in the room. Right? Some people just feel that they just can't be as honest as they want, but I try to give them different channels to express that. Yeah.
I do have cards
Yay.
that you can hand out. So grab some before you leave. I've got 45 slots for community conversations and only 11 signed up right now, so we need to push.
And so there is registration right now, right? There is registration right now.
Can we also get that digitally via email? You can send us the flyer and then we can mail it to people.
Sure.
You know, that'd be great.
And then
I've got
one of
these.
my questions is if registration is being requested, if someone dropped in that night, we would not turn them away,
That
correct?
is correct,
Okay,
yes.
wonderful. All right. And so going back to this assistance at sessions, please send me an email if you're able to attend the session and I'll just kind of track who I have at each of them. And then we can work out, once I know kind of who can come to which, then I'll work out what tasks we would have for each of us. If we have a large group, I typically break them into small groups and let them sort of converse with one another. So note-taking becomes really important in that case. If we have a group of less than 20, I will facilitate on my own. Again, sometimes depending on if we have a group dominator, if we have a real quiet group, I really have to flex my facilitation skills. But I like hearing as much as I can firsthand. It helps me immensely with the aggregation of the feedback.
Do you ever record those so that you can go back and just listen to them?
It's entirely up to the library that runs it. Some libraries do not want it recorded because they do not want it to be part of a discoverable thing. So it's up to you. We could absolutely record it. That certainly would be helpful to me, but it's not necessary. Again, because we're aggregating things, I'm looking for big ideas, not necessarily pull quotes. So I'm aiming for large themes,
What
problems.
goes through my mind is the note, if there's multiple groups, the note taker may not realize it's a big idea, but you might, or
Yeah.
something you think is a big idea, somebody else may not.
Yep.
But so the note taker may not capture
Mm-hmm.
the salient points.
Yep. So that's where helpers on the ground are real helpful. But I try to stay in as large of a group as possible for that purpose. But if we've got 40, I can only listen to so much. Okay, what else did I want to cover? Anything else that you want to cover about the listening sessions? Because those are a little more imminent than our survey launch, because obviously we're just getting started on the survey.
Push out, trying to get participants.
Terrific. My other question for you is, as we develop the survey, it's important for me that the survey could have a printed version in case online doesn't work for people. So I will work with Jennifer on what that looks like. It may require some filling out a paper survey that we then go back in as a committee and data enter into the whatever platform we use. But it is important to me that we do have that option. Another thing that many libraries will do is that they can make an appointment with a staff member, and the staff member will walk them through and fill out their answers. So that could be another option depending on how feasible you think that all is. But that's more of an accommodation than a preferred method. So that might be something that they have to, email the library or contact the library to make that happen. Other questions, ideas, concerns? I know we whipped through a lot of information here this evening, but this is what's up next. This is the hardest work, and it's the most important thing that we're going to do, which is hearing from the community. That directs the rest of our work as this committee. So next month, we've got all of our listening sessions. We'll probably have some really interesting conversations at our June meeting because we'll be fresh off of all of our listening sessions. The evaluation piece will also be important. That's when we'll analyze the debrief document that I give to you, which is basically the full-on report of what we've heard so far. And then obviously, once we get to August, we'll be finalizing those ideas. So we have a lot of hard work coming up this summer, but hearing from our community is really the most important piece that we're going to do. So if you have ideas, thoughts, questions between now and those listening sessions, please send them my way. And then just let me know which ones you'll be able to attend, and I'll be grateful for your help. Okay?
How are we gonna best reach your age?
I would say like, well, one thing, I know we kind of said it, but the school district newsletter, even though like, I know a lot of you guys don't get it because you're not parents, but all students get it. And actually, surprisingly, most students actually read it. I got mine today, and everyone does read through it because it usually contains really important information like graduation things, and people will read through it. So if they see like a link to a survey, like they will do it. And also like our school has advisory every week, and they have like an agenda they're required to follow. If we reached out to them, it could get put on the agenda, and students would be
That'd be
kind of
super.
required to fill it out and give us that feedback. So I feel like that's a strategy.
Okay. And the other thing that I think I'm hearing from you as well is to make it clear that anyone can and should take the survey, that this is not just like, we only want to hear from adults,
Yeah.
that we want to hear from everyone in the community. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people will fill it out just because like the amount of teens who come to the library to study, like I feel like you know most about that, but like we're here all the time trying to study, so I feel like it would get responses if they knew that this is a survey that we want everyone to fill out and it's like easily accessible from their phones.
Now, do you think they'll still fill it out if they don't get it before the end of the school year?
Yeah, I think they would, because everyone has their emails on their phones as well,
Right.
so I feel like they would. And if it's something like, yeah, actually, so because we're not gonna have it in June. It's true.
Right. Well, and it could also be part of summer reading promotion as well. I mean, that's where, in some ways, the teens who do come to the building, in-building signage can assist with that. But that may be part of the marketing strategy of a couple of people who are sharing it, saying, hey, I filled out this survey, because oftentimes you're gonna fill out things that your friends sort of say like, oh, I did this is actually for us, this is for the library. And so people might, that word of mouth might help quite a bit too.
There's also, in the summer, teachers who teach classes such as AP Lang, AP Lit, they have required readings and like required things to do during the summer that people have to go to a document for. If we reached out to those teachers, I feel like they'd be more than willing to put that link on their documents so that people can like see it and be encouraged to fill it out.
That's a good idea.
Can you repeat what you said about the specific agenda that people look at?
During the school year?
Yeah,
It's called advisory.
advisory, okay, but that would only be during the school
Yeah.
year. Okay, got it.
Last day of school.
Friday, June 7th.
Friday, June 7th. I don't know if we'll have our questions finished by then.
Yeah, but
And just for clarification, our meetings in June, July, and August are on the last Monday of each month? Is that correct?
That's what we have so far. I may have a scheduling issue in August that we might have to work around, but I will work with Jennifer on that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, maybe it's something.
Any other questions, comments, feedback?
This was fun.
It is fun. I mean, you can ask a million questions, but you got to narrow it down, and it's a fun project to look at. I've got our next meeting as June 25th at 5 p.m.
25th or 24th?
I had it as the 25th, but let's
Well, I
just
heard
check.
someone say Monday, which is
Oh,
the
yeah.
24th.
That was my mistake.
And the 25th would be a Tuesday.
The 24th is when we have our library board meetings.
It's like a Google form to submit.
Yeah, I have it as Tuesday the 24th at 5.
Tuesday, the 25th.
Or excuse me, I'm sorry, I already messed it up. Tuesday the 25th at 5, just as it says up here. Tuesday the 25th at 5.
Cool. Super duper.
Okay. Great.
And then the July one would be the 29th.
July,
We better get this on our calendar.
Or the 30th.
I have it
That's the
as
30th.
Tuesday the 30, oh wait, no. I have it as Tuesday the 23rd. Just if we're going on the same sequencing that we are now. Because it would be the 4th Tuesday.
Last Tuesday, is there last Tuesday in July?
No, the 23rd is the fourth Tuesday, the
Yeah.
30th would be the 5th.
Yeah, it's just how the dates fall.
Okay.
All right, Jennifer, I will officially close the meeting.
Yep, okay, so it is 6:45.
6:45.